Yesterday, there was a great meeting that Ashley and Darcy updated us on what the county's plans are for the staged reopening, and there were tons and tons and tons and tons of questions, many of which could be answered and some of which couldn't. And so I'm delighted that both Ashley and Darcy are able to join us today. For those of you who, although I think many, maybe most of you were on the meeting yesterday, but a quickie update on just what the stages are, what's supposed to happen in June, July, and August. And if you've got questions to direct to them, I think they can both stay for the whole meeting, but in any case, I know they want to listen to what you guys have got to say, because I know one of the things that we heard yesterday was it will be great for the nonprofits to talk about the creative ideas that they've got for reinventing summer 2020, what collaborations might be possible, how we can help each other. And then as one person said earlier, oh my God, are there going to be 7,000 nonprofit fundraisers in September? And would that be a good thing to avoid? And I think it probably would be. And how can we make that happen? So Shelley is going to facilitate this conversation, and that's what I hope it can be, is everybody jumping in with your ideas. I know Melissa from the Center of the Arts for the Arts has got a process that her board is using for reinventing the summer. Carlie has a whole bunch of ideas that she wanted to talk about. Michelle, who will be along, has got a sort of a model plan that she used to submit her ideas for the Wildflower Festival to the county, and it was accepted. So she was going to talk about what some of the elements of a plan are. So without any more ado, I'm going to turn it over to Shelley, who will probably turn it over to Darcy and Ashley for a moment.
You are right. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Like Mario said, this is going to be a conversation between nonprofits more than sort of an information session, but we would like to get a quick recap from Ashley and Darcy yesterday for those of us that weren't able to be on the meeting about what you addressed. So take it away.
And I'm taking notes, you guys, and Lauren is recording it, so you can pass this on to your friends and relations tomorrow.
Awesome. Thanks, Shelley. And Ashley can jump in at any point. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So
I want to jump in right now and congratulate Michelle on getting that approval.
Woohoo! Go Michelle.
So we're still in conversations.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the plan has great positive feedback initially. Tony has had a couple other questions. Doesn't seem like there's anything that's, and I'll talk about like what we're doing, but it doesn't seem like there's any deal breakers, but definitely some things that we still are working on. So yeah, almost.
Congratulations.
You'll get there. Yes, you'll get there. So what we talked about, and I won't be too long, and first I want to apologize. I know some of you on this call couldn't get in yesterday. We have fixed that. That was a hiccup that we were unaware of. We thought we could have up to 300 people. We also had 34 people pre-subscribed before the meeting, and over 100 wanted to join. So we apologize. It was recorded, but event summer 2020, trying to get this. So May and June, really, to be realistic in your planning and thoughts, considering an event, expectations are that the maximum group size will be 10, just as it is right now. There's no expected change for June. It's plausible that the group sizes will be allowed between 10 and 25 in July. However, or not however, but all of these sizes are outdoors, not indoors. In August, it's plausible that group sizes may increase to allow up to 25 people indoors and then 50 people outdoors. I'm not sure that we have an answer yet, but we have asked what that means for a tent. Is a tent considered indoors? And does it depend on walls for your tent? That question has been asked, and it will go on the events subgroup page. So there are some Q&A that we're waiting on responses from. Basically, as you all probably already know, in-state travel is anticipated, and we all know everything's subject to change beginning May 27th, and we're basing a lot of our sector plans on that date for lodging and restaurants. It's unclear when travel will be allowed between states. This is not from our county, this is state mandates that we're talking about here. And of course, second homeowners are welcome immediately with a 7-day quarantine and waiver. And of course, on May 27th, that waiver and quarantine, those are lifted. At least that's anticipated. I shouldn't be definitive with anything I say. We're encouraging people to look at how other events in other parts of the state, such as Telluride and Aspen, are handling these situations. So I'm going to wait, and I'm going to stop sharing. We have some examples on the website. We do have a website, I'll drop it in chat, and it is specific to events, just like you guys have a nonprofit one. We add, sorry. Oh, I thought somebody said something. And on that, we have the Wildflower Festival application that was very, very highly regarded by Joni Reynolds. She thought they did a fantastic job. Michelle deserves a huge amount of credit or congratulations for working very hard, basically in a vacuum. So we're really happy to see that have great potential for this summer. There is a second example. It's a redacted or an abridged version of Rocky Mountain Biological Laboratories application. Theirs is a 40-page document, I think, in all. What this is a summary, so you can see how it was done. It's not for their kids' camps, and it is not for their race. It is only for their science. So it's a little bit different. They're treating it like an event, but it is a little different than what an event would be like. But they have talk about scientists. They understand COVID. So that's another example. And then Ashley has put up there a sector plan template. So when I stop talking, I'll put those in the chat box so you all can grab them. But Ashley, what do you think we need to add?
I can, are you working on grabbing those links? Because I can, okay. I would add that we submitted a ton of questions to Joni because there's a lot of questions around this. So just a quick overview of what questions we are already asking from Joni includes, as Darcy said, the tent situation, so whether a walled tent makes it suddenly indoors or whether a tent can be put out and without walls and still be considered outdoors. We are looking for an estimate on the September group sizes. We don't have that yet, but we requested one. Whether or not races can be larger than the required occupancy limit, but if they have waived starts or start waves. Do individual event plans need to be submitted, or can the organizer that runs many similar events? This is primarily, I think, for wedding planners, but might also apply to some of y'all. So can an organizer do one plan to cover many similar events? Could socially distance, this I think came from you, Carlie, could socially distance areas allow for events over the size limits, such as multiple fenced-off areas of 25 with no intermingling between the fenced-off areas? In my mind, that does look funny, but we'll get over that hurdle when we come to it. If an event's approved, who's responsible for enforcing the rules? I have more. 25 indoor if the allowance is 25 indoors, 50 outdoors, does that actually mean there's a total of 75 attendees? As long as you maintain no more than 25 indoors the whole time? If a public event includes the potential for privately hosted events, do the privately hosted events have to be included in the event plan? Once an event is approved, do attendees still need to maintain the 6 feet of separation while at the event? And what, oh, this is just mine, never mind. So that was another question I had for her. So those, just to let y'all know, we've already got those questions in front of Joni, and we can of course add more if they come up today. And then I did see Melissa wanted some clarification on whether, on the fact that all the numbers are outdoors, does this mean that we cannot gather 10 people indoors currently and through June and July? I might have not sent this question to Joni, but I meant to. So another question that I have in front of Joni is whether or not an event that falls within the current regulations actually needs a plan submitted. So I think that relates to your question, Melissa, but I don't know the answer for sure yet. But so we can currently gather in groups of 10. So if you hold an event of 9 or fewer people indoors, my assumption is that's fine based on the current orders, but I am getting clarification from Joni on that.
Another clarification that I just want you all to try to wrap your heads around, it's a little bit, so when you think of a group, somebody said, well, if I'm serving dinner outside and there are tables outside and I limit it to 10 people and then 2 people leave and I let 2 more people in, does that work? And Joni's response was, no, the groups cannot intermingle. So if you think of a parade of cars and you have 10 people in a van, in each van, those are separate groups and they do not intermingle. Or, and she's going to be looking at whatever you propose. She's going to be looking at whether or not you can prevent 2 people from going from this group over to this group and back, or vice versa. That is really, you know, specific to the spread of the virus and how that can exponentially spread the virus very quickly. So the idea is containing, assuming there's a virus in each of those groups, you've contained it to 10 people or whatever the number is at that time. But if you let people go from one group to another, you've now spread it to 100 really quickly, even if you keep the group size as 10. So that is something I think Michelle did really well in her proposal. So that's why I think she's being seen very favorably. How you do that in your events, and I know I'm thinking of a million events, how you do that is going to require creativity. The other point of clarification, there was that one, Ashley, and there was one other that I said yesterday. I'm forgetting it now. I know I had 2. Do you remember what it was? I'm so sorry.
We have to write everything down these days.
It's all written down. It doesn't matter. I will come back to it if I think of it. But that point of helping you understand what a group is, and that group has to stay within a group and not intermingle with other groups. You could think of it like, yeah. So we can open for questions if there are any.
Super, thank you so much. And if questions come up along the way, feel free to put them in the chat. Or Allison, you have a question?
I do. So I'm just wondering if say a person who's a private citizen of Crested Butte wants to have a party at their home and they're going to host, 8 people, including themselves and their spouse, or 8 people plus themselves, so to under the 10. And then they ask people at that party to give a donation to Adaptive. Now, is that considered an adaptive event, even though it's totally not run by Adaptive? It's a private individual doing it. And do, like, if I have a party at my house with 10 people, do I need to tell Joni and get that approved? I'm just
so if it, like Ashley said, if it falls, so everyone has to follow the health orders. So if the health orders say under 10, second homeowners, private parties are expected to fall under that. I would say you probably don't need to if it's a private party, but you have to keep in mind that that includes if they're catering and any
No
staff.
caterers.
So
No,
it's,
it would include everyone in the home.
yep. So as long as you stay under that, what I heard from Joni was that as long as they're following the guidelines that are in place at that time, whatever the health orders are, they don't have to request a waiver. But if it's anything that exceeds those health orders, they do have to request the waiver. And either you do it on behalf of Adaptive or they do it on behalf of themselves, saying it's an adaptive fundraiser. So private fundraising parties do fall under this event waiver requirement, but if they're small, you might be able to, you can do them without. And
So it looks like we did get an answer to that.
oh, it may have just come in recently, huh?
Okay, good.
Or
Okay.
did we?
I don't remember that we've actually heard confirmation on that.
Oh,
I think
Okay.
so far I've been assuming that.
And just to
so-
clarify, are you posting the answers on the county events page so we can reference that as the answers come in?
We'll definitely send them out in an e-blast to that event subscription link.
And then they will go on the webpage like Q&A, and then we'll list them all. And actually, Ashley's right. We think that's what it is, and the official answer hasn't come through. And I was thinking it had, so I apologize. But that's what we think you're going to be able to do, and we will clarify that in the Q&A.
So,
And Allison, I think that you had a question between like if you just have 9 friends over to your house, that's fine.
well,
Y'all-
specifically, I mean, as an example, we're considering promoting or asking people if we need to go to a virtual event for the Crested Butte Open, considering having or encouraging people to have private watch parties if we go in that direction. So Adaptive we wouldn't send staff, we would potentially drop off catering to those locations, but it would be like drop at the doorstep, ring the bell, walk away. So there would be no intermingling of staff, but that's the thing. And I guess I'm just wondering, like, what is the best process? I mean, Joni's obviously got her hands full and super busy with things way more important than the questions that I need to ask, but these questions are also critical to our organization and for our ability to move forward. So what is the process? Like, how do I get these questions asked without taking valuable time from Joni?
Mm-hmm.
I think Joni is going to tell you your questions are really important. She wants to hear them. And I would say what you're describing is a little bit more of not just 9 people in a house, but it's an orchestrated event between houses. And she's going to want to see a plan for that. And the way you submit that plan is if you can attend the next event meeting as well, but Ashley and I will help you, or we may have other people helping to help guide you with a format and how you put that into writing, and then you submit it to Joni. Whether it goes through me or Ashley or directly to Joni, we're clarifying that. So right now we're just saying, send it to us like I did with Michelle. She sent it to me, I sent it to Joni. Joni asked me to clarify some things, I sent it to Michelle. Like, I don't know if we have to have that middleman, but we'll clarify that as well. So for now, just work with us on that.
Okay.
And I agree with Darcy. I think y'all are going to end up having to include, if you're advertising it as part of your event plan, I think you're going to have to include that in your event plan. But we do also have that question to Joni.
Sure, and I have no problem putting a plan out there to her. I'm curious, like, my assumption is she wants all this information so that if someone does get sick, they can track it and they can notify people and make sure that, everyone is being safe. So I have no problem providing that information, and I'm happy to play along. I just didn't know the rules.
Yeah, we're all figuring out the rules.
Great, and thanks for providing that forum for the Q&A. I think that's really helpful so we can keep those questions coming and don't necessarily have to wait for a meeting And thanks for the great work that you two are doing. You're amazing leaders, so thank you. To piggyback off of Allison's and to move the conversation along, like that is a really creative way of trying to reimagine your event. And I think there's a lot of creativity going on right now. So we'd love to hear from Carlie, Melissa, and Michelle about how you're re-envisioning your events and being creative about them. So if we could start with Carlie from the Gunnison Arts Center. Hey, Carlie.
Hi. Okay, we really just have a lot of ideas that we're working on and brainstorming right now for the most part. We too are learning what the rules are going to be and how we're going to submit these things, and you know, some of the new information coming in. You know, I guess I'll start with our summer concert series is Sundays at 6, so it's free summer concerts in Legion Park in Gunnison on Sundays. So we are kind of hoping that we can hold these events maybe in July and August. My thought was that because it's outside and we have such a big space to spread out, that we could create box seats with like outdoor art, yard art, stakes that have cool things on them. The art could be for sale, which would be another benefit to our artists, and then the art would mark off social distancing sections. So you could have the event limit number within a section and then another event limit number within another section. I think, you know, the difficulty really becomes who enforces the rules, and are the rules so extensive that it takes away from the whole reason we're doing the event in the first place. Because they're free concerts and we do them for, you know, the fun of the health of the community, and usually they're a community gathering event, but since we can't gather beyond a certain number, that's definitely a hurdle that we're looking at right now. And I think with this template that the event template that's provided, I think that'll help us really work through some of those issues, just putting that together and help us decide, is this really worth it? Because that event really would be for offering our community a reprieve from quarantine. Some other things we're thinking about are, we did a virtual art walk in May. We thought maybe in June we would do a virtual art walk along with a in-person art walk that, so it's kind of complicated, but we could allow groups into the building, but no more than the number, so that they wouldn't intermingle. And then outside our building, we have a large sidewalk area, so we could have a staging area of people waiting to get in. And maybe in that area, there would be some opportunity for having snacks or beverages that people could enjoy while they were waiting. And then they could come in, walk. We have a one-way walk through the art center, so nobody would be crossing paths. So people could come in and check out the art, and maybe we have a musician on the sidewalk. So you kind of get the art walk vibe, but we're still being safe. We're also tossing around some ideas for summer theater. So we had some, everything from silent, kind of silent theater through a window to a drive-in theater that maybe we either broadcast or have KBUT help us broadcast, to, you know, same idea with the park, open air theater where there's sections blocked off. So we're really working hard on how to bring those art forms to people's lives while staying safe. I don't want to take too much time.
Yeah, thanks, Carlie. I think it's really tricky because we love the events that we've put on for years so much, and the atmosphere that we've created. So to have to kind of find the essence of what it means to our constituents and to our community and bring that across, but maybe in a different way, is really tricky to do. Mm-hmm. Some of that means really letting go of how how we've done things in the past, but I think those are cool ideas. One thing I did want to clarify with the max number. So if the max number is 25, that's 25 people that are socially distanced from each other, and that's the maximum capacity of the gathering, correct?
Correct, but that is correct.
Okay.
But there are some events that can actually have more than one group of 25 or whatever that number is at the time and still have their event. For example, the Wildflower Festival is one. They can have groups of 8 hikes going all around in different places. So their total participant number is far more than 25, right? Does that make sense?
But they're all in different areas and they're not actually interacting with each other.
There's no interaction.
Anyway. Okay.
And I did remember that one other point that I wanted to make, it was that it is going to be required of the directors of these events to think about the egress and ingress of people to your event. So, for example, if you have a group of 10, a group of 10, a group of 10, but if they all show up as 30 at the same time, now they're all one group. Or if they're all done at the same time and they go hang out on elk together. You know, there's going to be questions about how they arrive, how they remain separate through that arrival as well.
Super, thanks for clarifying that.
Can I ask a quick question?
Mm-hmm.
I know there's a lot of gray area right now and there's a lot of moving pieces, but are these numbers, since you guys are talking to Joni directly, are these numbers pretty set in stone for the summer, or could it go up to 50 or 100 in July if numbers stay down?
She wanted us to get the message out. It is not likely at all that we're going to get over 50 this summer.
Okay.
It'll be a joyful occasion if we do. The idea that we would get to 250 is between 50 and 250 is really unrealistic in her eyes at this time. For these 3 months, she's not talking about September. She's not talking about October yet. Her crystal ball doesn't go that far. She's trying to prepare you all with the best guesstimate she can offer. And she, yeah, so that's, I think.
No, that's helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
And there's also a chance that we could, in August, go to groups of 10 or groups of 1 again, correct?
That is correct. So it can go both ways. We're hoping it doesn't go backwards, but it could go both ways.
Cool. So thanks, Carlie. Melissa, could you share with us how you're re-envisioning your summer at the Arts Center, Center for the Arts?
So yesterday after we got off the call, we're starting a plan about our space and our building. We have a really unique situation that we did not even realize until you guys, Darcy and Ashley, were talking about the pods of people. And that is, we have 6 distinct entrances and areas that include bathrooms in our campus. So we're hoping to submit a plan to Joni that we will be able to use those spaces simultaneously for small groups of 10, because we've got a lot of organizations that want to use our space for small groups, and ourselves as well. So I think that's where we're going with that piece of it. I also just wanted to share with you guys the process that the staff went through after the April 27th order came out, and we realized, wow, the center really is in the business of gathering people. That's our product, and we can't really do our product. So how can we fulfill our mission, and how can we reach our community? And so we actually, the 3 remaining staff members plus 1 volunteer spent a couple of hours in a visioning session with my brother. He is a Google executive. He travels around the world working with startup businesses, and he runs a business accelerator and incubator. much like Ice Lab, but just at the Google level. And he goes through this process with businesses to find out whether or not what they have dreamed up is worthy of pursuing. And so we worked on a sort of a set of ideas and questions that he asked of us in advance. And basically what he says is, after he listens to pitches from entrepreneurs, often at the end of listening to their 10 or 15 minute pitch, he's left with a question, 2 questions almost every single time. And they are, so what and who cares? And so that's where we began, was, you know, who cares about what we're doing at the Center for the Arts right now? And in terms of what we're proposing to do, so what? Is anybody going to interact with that? Is it important? Is it necessary in this moment? And so it was a really powerful exercise for us. It got us really thinking creatively, not just with what we were going to do, but why we were doing it. And, you know, we came up with, for the Center for the Arts, that, and this is something I think Carlie could definitely echo, is that arts is healing. And we have a lot of hurt and anger and frustration and fear going around right now. And so we started that with that. And then we also started with a piece from our mission vision statement that the center is for everyone. And so those 2 things really guided the rest of our conversation about how we were going to approach this, what we were going to do, why were we relevant, are we relevant? And it was really pretty cool. We generated a huge list, narrowed it down again after yesterday's conversation with the events group. And I think it was just a really great process to start at that level. Some of the other things that my brother got us to think about, he gave us a list of 5 things. And, you know, basically the first thing is, what are the cool things that you're uniquely good at? As your organization, your business, what makes you different and sets you apart? Another thing is, the second thing was the product. So once you figure out what you're really great at, how do you package it into a product, especially in this time when our product, like I said at the beginning, isn't going to work anymore. We can't gather 1,000 people at Alpenglow. So, and then the next piece of that is, you know, do people actually want your product? Some of the things that we've been struggling with is, you know, Carlie and I talked about this at a meeting the other day. Everybody was really excited when things started going live stream. And now everybody's really tired of that. You know, the product was exciting, and the GAC and the center both have seen a drop off. And hey, we were really excited to do, you know, a live stream concert with you, or a cooking class or whatever. And now the numbers are starting to go down. The weather's nice. People are done looking at their screens. So that got us thinking a lot about, does anybody want our product? And as opposed to the millions of other products that are out there, when the Met is live streaming at the same time we are, can we compete with that? The last couple are design, and this is interesting. Is your product user-friendly? Is it helpful? Does it delight your users? So in the arts, you know, this was a really important question for us to look at as we were envisioning what to do next. Next piece is growth. How are you going to generate demand for your product? How will you produce enough to meet demand? And how are you going to fund it? And we took a really interesting approach to funding. We're choosing all things that have a much lower overhead than we have in the past. Almost everything that we're putting out there has little to no overhead and mostly return. And that was, again, led through this piece of the conversation. And then the last thing we talked about in thinking about the future of the center is our team. Who do we need on our team? Some of you guys may be aware that the center had to lay off a great deal, almost everyone in our organization. There are 3 of us left. It was a really difficult thing. And in thinking about how we go into this next phase, it's different. It's completely different than what we were doing, you know, at the beginning of March. And so now that we're doing something different and we've developed a different product and we know who our audience is now and what they might be looking for, who can deliver that? And this is a really interesting exercise for us because we can't bring everyone back. We don't have that ability right now. And I think the face of the organization has completely changed, as many of us are facing right now. And so thinking about people was a huge piece of the plan that we developed for the board of directors. And so we presented first to our executive committee, then to our board today, and back to our executive committee this week, a document that outlined the thoughts around all of this, and A through F exhibits that included everything from what's the GAC doing? What are the other people in the market doing? Who are the people that we can bring back? What role are they now going to play in our organization? To the events themselves and how they be executed, and budgets that went with all of it. And so this process ended in a very concrete document that we shared, but it started from the place of vision. And so I think, you know, I got off the call, and Jillian, who's our development director, you could tell she was just really energized. She's like, wow, I feel like we're getting somewhere. We have some thoughts now and into driving behind why we're doing these things. And it was interesting because it started out, hey, how do we change what we already have? And that we realized we had to take what we already had and throw that out the window and redevelop a new product. So that's the process that we went through. I'm happy, if you guys are interested, to share the document that we started with, if you're interested in going through a similar visioning process with your staff or your board. For us, just the way our organization operates, we did this as a staff and then just presented it to our board. But you know, in some organizations with smaller boards, you might want to do it a different way.
I think it would be great if you're willing to share it.
Sure. I think, Mario, I sent it to you. Do you need me to resend, and you could send it to the group? How do you want to?
I've got it, and we can, if you don't mind it being posted when we post the other documents, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, thanks, Melissa. I like how you pointed out that you needed to kind of hone in on what your vision, on what your purpose is, and then develop a vision from there and let go of things. Does anyone have any questions? Because this actually ties into what Michelle had to do with the Wildflower Festival, to just be willing to let go of a lot and come up with a whole new vision. So unless anybody has any questions, and of course, feel free to put them in the chat. But Michelle, I'd love to hear a little bit more about where you started and where you've come through your visioning process.
Thanks. So our plan, I think folks can read our plan. It's a little tedious and long. But I think maybe what might be more helpful is kind of how we figured that out. And we started with this way before, even before lockdown. We started with this at the end of February when things started, what's going to happen? This is weird. This could get here. And I have one person on my board that used to be a management consultant. And so she's been just really invaluable, helping me brainstorm, and just kind of like every week we meet. Okay, what's changed? What's new? What do we need to do? How can we dance with this? And so what we ended up doing, I think it was end of March, mid to end of March, is we just to analyze, and this is going to sound like so operational compared to Melissa's kind of vision quest. This is like, you know, nuts and bolts, dollar signs and decimals. And we created all these different scenarios. What about a 75% festival? What about a 50% festival? What are our margins? What are our revenues? And basically, we looked at what if we have to cancel, because it's a very real possibility, and what is our cash flow when we cancel? And so we took that, and then we looked at what would be the minimum we could do to equal cancel. I don't know if that makes sense, but it costs a lot of money to keep staff. It costs a lot of money to continue operating. And like, if March 25th we had just canceled, we could have, you know, cut everything back, saved all our resources, buckled down, waited until 2021. And we didn't want to do that because we feel like we need something happy in the community this summer. We need a festival in the community this summer, and we generally have 2,000 people at the festival through the depot. So we knew that wasn't going to happen. So we looked at what our break even was going to be with cancellation, and we figured out what was the smallest thing we could run. And then we started looking at what parameters we would need to have. And so basically all of our events, we have 8 participants in an event, which usually we have 14. So it's a huge reduction in numbers. We usually have 20 to 25 events going out a day, like boom, 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 like usually 3 or 4 of them needed a time. And we recognized that we were only going to be able to do 1 at a time. And so we basically continued to scale back. We made the decision, no out of town leaders, really early on, just to kind of remove that complication, and every complication we could remove, we did. So I guess the challenge is to ask yourself, what can we do? Okay, if we can't do what we usually do, what can we do? And that's how we came up with our plan. We are a little better equipped to do that because we have multiple things going on. It's not like 1,000-person gathering all at one time. So that made it a lot easier, I think. But it's tough too, because, you know, it changes things significantly. So that's what we've done. And masks are not going to be optional. I mean, if you don't want to wear a mask, you're not going to go on an event and I'll give you your money back. You know, that's just, we are going to have a list of protocols that people, if they choose not to do, they aren't invited, unfortunately. And I think overall people have been really receptive. We're about 70% sold out of what we're offering right now. So we're hoping we're going to be able to continue. But it's, you know, it just depends. I mean, we are ready to cancel all the way up until July 2nd. We feel like we have to be willing to follow whatever guidelines, you know, are currently in place, because the most important thing is keeping our staff and our leaders and our guests healthy. And so I think that's the challenge too, is as we're trying to figure out how we're going to survive as organizations, because everybody depends on their events for their revenue. We're, you know, I think keeping people's lives at the forefront and making sure that what we're doing is going to protect the lives of everybody that's involved is really important. I don't know, it's kind of, I can go into the details of what we're doing if folks think that would be helpful. You know, when we developed this, we started where we were right before we got locked down. So, you know, there were 10 people allowed, hand washing, sanitizing, masks. The flow of traffic, like Darcy mentioned, we've staggered our start times by 30 minutes. So the most people that would be together at one time would be 10, and then there would be 30 minutes between those 10 and the next 10 going out. They're all going to different places. They're all ending their events at different times, and nobody is going to be invited back to check in after they've left their event. We'll be cleaning things. We're going to be, you know, doing sort of a non-touchable sales. If we're allowed to sell merchandise, you know, you can pick it out from like behind a little table and we can hand it to you. But basically, you know, we're trying to take into consideration all of the guidelines that have been given to like retail stores and guides and outfitters and incorporate them into one plan. I think the important thing is it is possible. I think everybody's event, it's not going to be the same, but I think there is possibility everywhere, especially like Shelley and I have talked about collaborating. And well, we don't just have to do Historic Garden Tour 1 week, we can do it all summer. If we get, you know, 8 people per tour, I'm happy to jump in and be a flower person, and we can just try to work together and see if we can make some fun things happen this summer, even though it's not what we're used to doing. We're also doing a whole virtual thing next to this, I'm working with leaders right now to lead virtual classes, and we've got our YouTube channel officially up as of today. That's a whole new thing. I need some young folks to help me with that. But you know, we're just trying to think out of the box, do different things, and I think there's a lot of opportunity as we do so. If anybody has questions, like I said, you guys can read the plan, and I'm happy to individually, you know, answer questions here in terms of what exactly that looks like. But hopefully that's a little bit helpful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So usually the Wildflower Festival, do people go on multiple walks and attend multiple events?
They do attend multiple events, but those events aren't on the same day. So, yeah, so they would be, in fact, probably, Darcy, I should probably ask Joni about that, because they can sign up for multiple things, but they would only be in one of those groups each day, or maybe not even consecutive days, but like they might attend on Monday and a Friday.
Yeah, so I was wondering how you dealt with people that were in one group one day being in a different group with different people the next day, and that intermingling, I think they're calling it, or if that was a concern, how that happened.
You know, Joni didn't kick that back as a concern, but that's probably something we should ask her about. I think the social distancing piece, like each of our groups is able to maintain that social distancing because they're so small.
I think because the one thought I have, and this is not a response from Joni, but trying to understand her mindset, is if they're not on the same day and they're not interacting right there and then, you know, they may go to Elk Avenue or downtown Gunnison and get takeout or go to a restaurant. There's going to be other interactions, and social distancing and wearing masks is going to be really important. And I know Michelle has that requirement. And I think she's maybe recognizing that that interaction with that social distancing outdoors with a mask is maybe no more dangerous than going to dinner that night. And she can't, that's my thought. Along those lines is why she's not maybe concerned about that on a different day. Yeah,
and so we eliminated everything that had transportation, everything that had food, everything that was indoors, everything that was coordinated with another group, like another entity. So basically we eliminated everything where we could think that there was a possibility of increased exposure. So there's only one event that has transportation, and that's Hike to Aspen. And that has like social distancing guidelines within the transportation. And that was highlighted in the plan too, that this was an exception. And so, you know, as we go forward, Joni may come back and say, can't do that, you know, that's, you know, or we just kind of have to play it by ear and see as we go along, because we don't have a playbook right now.
That's a really good point about not having a playbook. I think we're all in that situation together. So, but I really like how you talked about, one, you know, we do, by following these orders and coming up with plans that are really, you know, understand the rulings and understand how to follow them, you know, we're letting people know that we take it seriously as a community and as organizations within our community. That and I think that's really important, just in terms of our brand as Crested Butte and as Gunnison County, that we are playing it safe, and that we understand the rules. And that we're willing to adapt to them as the playbook changes every day or every week, I guess. And I love that you also talked about collaboration. I mean, I know the two of us have talked about ways that we can do that. And I really think there's so much community and creativity amongst our nonprofits, and there's opportunity with that too, how we can sort of reach other audiences by doing things together that maybe we haven't considered before. So there are definitely interesting opportunities out there to pursue. I think I saw a question in the chat. It's about cancellation policy. What is your cancellation policy for the summer, and how are you thinking about the financial repercussions of a cancellation?
I can speak to that. I wrote that in. Michelle, I think it's awesome that you guys have done so much to be creative and problem solve and think about what your core mission is and how you can deliver that product. One thing that we're struggling with at the Nordic Center is that these are massive fundraisers for us. And so if we're going to put these events on, there's a lot of costs involved beforehand. You know, it's not just in hiring staff to lead guided trips and stuff. Like, there's a lot of cost up front. And so we have cancellation policies for our events that are standing, but going forward, I think, you know, to treat the customer right, we're feeling like the expectation and the right thing to do would be a full refund. But it's not true that no money was spent to plan the event, you know? So I'm just wondering how you guys navigated that process, knowing that you're planning something that might get canceled.
It's a great question, and it's a bummer because it might get canceled, and we pay, you know, all the software fees, like for registration. If people register, we pay those fees, and we have to refund those fees because we feel like well, first of all, we've always had a pretty strict cancellation policy. And there's always been cancellation fees. We have now we've advertised a no risk cancellation policy. So you can cancel anytime for any reason, all the way up until 2 weeks before the event. And we just felt like we had to give that to people, to just give them the confidence to register at all. And we are going to lose money on that because people are already canceling. You know, they're like, oh, things aren't looking so great. And so we are giving them full refunds. We will give full refunds if we need to cancel the whole thing. One of the things that we're going to do is ask people to donate a certain percentage of their registration fees. We haven't really figured that out because we're still hoping that we're going to be able to do it. But if they'll donate a certain percentage of their event fee, they can be put in for a drawing for, you know, $100 gift certificates for next year, or posters or something. So we want to kind of find a way to incentivize contributing a portion of their fees. We're not going to roll over to next year because that just is a cash flow nightmare, trying to figure that out. And, you know, again, I think what's helped us is we looked at what cancellation looked like. And every week we update the cash flow for both scenarios, holding the partial festival and holding a canceled festival. And every week we move forward, we spend more money because we're planning the festival. So that drains a little bit of cash flow out of the canceled scenario because we're spending money on staff and on supplies and different things. But we've just accepted that we may have to cancel in July, and we may lose money that we could have saved if we had canceled in June. And it's just a risk. It's a risk that we're willing to take to just keep moving forward towards offering a festival. So I don't know, hopefully that helped answer that question a little bit. I don't think there's a right or a wrong way to do it, except that we have to be sensitive to the customer first and foremost, and they're having a hard time too. Did that help?
Thanks, Michelle. And Laura, what I hear you saying is sort of, where do you make that calculation of how much you invest and what your ROI is going to be? And where do you decide to maybe just move forward and make that investment, or make another choice?
Yeah, and just kind of wondering how other people are navigating that. With the cancellation of the Winter Grand Traverse, we gave participants an option to donate the full fund, their full refund, to roll it over. We are doing the rollovers, and Michelle is right, it's a nightmare. And we also or we gave people a partial refund option. Like we just couldn't figure out financially how to do a full refund because it is our largest fundraiser of the year and pays multiple people's salaries, and wasn't something we were foreseeing. But now looking forwards to the summer grant traverses, we're trying to figure, we don't want to do partial again. We want to do full refunds for sure. Like Michelle said, like everyone's having a hard time and the customer is also stressed, and we want them to have confidence in booking with us and also confidence that we're going to treat them right if things don't go to plan. But so our fiscal year at the Nordic Center starts July 1. So we're budgeting for next year, and just wondering how other people are navigating that concept of cancellation and refunds and planning around it. And like you said, Shelley, sort of how do you weigh the risks? How do you invest all of these things in an event? Because it's not free. And I think that some people, like with our races, they're like, what did you spend the money on? And you're like, well, there's a lot of people who, there's a lot of permits, and there's a lot of publishing, and there's a lot of marketing, and there's a lot of like hut reservations and hotel reservations, like all these things that have to happen in advance, besides our salaries. And just there's a lot of smart people in this conference call. So I wondered kind of how Michelle had handled that and what other people were thinking.
I realized
Oh,
Go,
sorry.
Kristen.
Go ahead. We're in a little bit of a different boat, but our programming, the last of my winter programming had to be canceled, as well as all of my spring programming. And what we did as an organization is we offered 3 different options. Number 1, they could get a credit, and we set how long that credit would allow us, or they could, let me go back. The credit would only be eligible for a programming through July 31st, because if we continue to offer refunds going forward, we're robbing Peter to pay Paul for our operating expenses. So, but we did communicate to all of our participants that they could, number 1, receive this credit, or number 2, they could be refunded in an original form of payment, less a $25 non-refundable registration fee. And we explained to them that was covering our operating expenses that were incurred to just make the program happen. We have had very, very little. In fact, only one person has questioned us about that. I took it to the board, and we decided to refund her fully. But out of 200 spring soccer players, to have one ask for that $25 to be refunded back is not bad. We're also, the third option for our participants, if they didn't want a credit or a refund, we asked them to donate it to us. And I've received people who said, I donated 100%, or I would like a refund, but I'd like to donate a portion of it. And they've specified that dollar amount. So it's helped us with those expenses we incurred in creating the programming. And we've been really, our participants have been supportive. I mean, we're not bringing in we're locally based. We're not really, our programming is for our community, not necessarily second homeowners or visitors. So the community's been behind us so far, and that's a good thing. The big thing is communicating with them clearly and giving them options so they don't feel it's one or the other, all or none.
That's great to hear, Kristen. to see that people are stepping up like that. And just to respect everybody's time, we're getting close to the end of the hour, but I did want to also reference Darcy's point that, this may be a good time to focus on donor relations. I know we all love our events, and it's really hard to let things go that we've spent years building up. And but that is a really good, that's a really good sign, Kristen, that people are still willing to support the organization, but in other ways. And this isn't going to go on forever. So, so communicating clearly what value they get out of contributing in a different way to keep the organization sustainable, I think it sounds like that worked really well for you. So I'd like to thank everyone for participating. And if anybody wants to stay on and has any further questions, I'm certainly happy to stay on for a few more minutes, but this is we're such a wonderful county and valley, and thank you all for being here and for sharing your creativity and your brain power and your experiences. And it's been personally really valuable for me, and yeah, keep the questions coming if you'd like.
So I want to thank Shelley and Darcy and Ashley and Carlie and Michelle and Melissa for offering what you did, and everybody for their questions. We've been willing to do one of these every other week, and I'm suspecting that more and more questions like these are going to be emerging. So we haven't picked a topic for the next one yet. So if you've got questions as a result of today for what you'd like to see at the next one of these, please fire them off to me. But meanwhile, I really loved what Shelley said, and I'm putting words in your mouth, Shelley, but this is how I heard it, which is that the nonprofits can really help brand our county as a place that's both profoundly compassionate, respectful of one another, and creative in coming up with things that'll make our lives even more meaningful and fun and good. So thank you all for being here today. And indeed, if anyone wants to stay on the call, I'm game to stay on as well, along with Shelley. So, but otherwise, we'll see you soon. Stay in touch.
Thanks, everyone.
Hey, Mario, when you said you would post the stuff, the documents, were you talking about on the Community Foundation website or the county website?
The COVID-19 Gunnison County site. And
Okay.
I think, yeah, and I think you're all familiar with it. If you go there and check the business resources, and you'll find the nonprofit subgroup there. And that's where you'll find the recording of this, as well as Melissa's and Michelle's plans. And if there's other things that any of you want to send, Carlie, if you come up with a operating plan or something and want to share it, I think that would be great. Or if anybody does.
Yeah, my ideas are changing every time I have a meeting like this. I had so many big ideas that are definitely getting more and more directive, less grandiose. So.
Well,
That's
actually,
great, though. I think those are really helpful for the rest of us, because I think we've all got these like really big ideas, and then how do we actually package it so that we can pull it off? So,
Yeah.
Absolutely. But I do feel like the creativity of the nonprofits, if nothing else, I really think that's one of our stocks in trade. We don't maybe have tons of money, but we have really good ideas and can figure things out in remarkable ways.
And I really think that it's the resiliency and the creativity that's going to pull us out of where we are now. The combination of those two things, being able to be back and being able to be creative about how we do it.
I agree. And since it's two arts and culture people who remain on the call, tomorrow I'm going to be on a webinar, interestingly enough, from the Policy Research Institute. It's not an arts organization. It's not a community development organization, but it's a whole webinar. It's like, oh my God, we've discovered creativity. And it was like, why community building, community development, and economic development organizations need to partner with arts and culture groups right now. So
Oh, I love it.
if the notes are worthwhile, I will certainly share them there as well.
Yeah, please do.
Okay, thank you, everybody. Thanks a lot,
Thank
Shelley,
you.
and thank you, Carlie.
Thanks, ladies.
Thanks, Shelley. Have a
was
good one.
great. Bye-bye.
Yeah, you too.
Bye.